right, guys. Hey, I hope you're doing all right. I hope you've caught up reading up through chapter 12. I know that we got behind first part of the week, and so I know there's a lot of you probably nowhere near this, but you need to get caught up. This book does not require you to have me analyze it and go through it with you. So I'm doing chapters 12 and 13 today, though, because I want you to see some of the highlights and make sure you got through it. This is not Excuse me, goodness. This is not a replacement for reading the chapters, though. So please make sure you've done that. Okay. All right. We start off with the typical, like, there's a couple of little quotes here from two people I know this time, finally. First one being Henry David Thoreau, who I know very well. And look at that first sentence. Rather than love, then money, then fame, give me truth. That is going to be a Chris McCandless thing for sure. The idea that, money, fame, even love, relationships. These just aren't things he cared about. He just wanted to get out there and look for his version of what he thought was true. Okay. And then you got a G.K. Chesterton, good Lord, quote, for children are innocent and love justice, while most of us are wicked and naturally prefer mercy. So that quote's kind of giving you a hint about what we're about to get into. We're going to get some flashback here into what's Chris's tension with his family. Okay. And it's definitely a problem, although I don't think necessarily to the level he treats it. All right. I do think he exaggerates it a little bit, or not the writer, Chris. Okay. So we get into it, and, you get this little bit of information about when he graduates. I think it's graduating from high school. Yeah, when he graduates from high school and he goes off on one of these random trips he goes off on until, they finally, when he comes back, you can tell, misfortune's not something he was on. It's not just like the first time he had a problem was in Alaska when he died. He obviously struggled here too. It points out he got lost in the Mojave Desert where he went, nearly succumbed to dehydration. So he nearly dies from this. But he does come back home. But again, there's just this tension. And guys, some of you feel this now with your parents. It's your parents, everything you say, it seems they snap at you, and to them, they feel the exact same way. Everything they say, they feel like you snap at them. This is just growing up. It's what causes us to move out of our parents' houses so we don't live there forever. Because, in all honesty, if you were told you could stay at home with your parents all the time and there would be no friction, your parents would let you come and go as you please. There was nothing there. They would do your laundry. They would pay your bills. Most of us would have a hard time leaving that situation. Nobody's excited about going out and paying bills and being broke. Okay. So this tension is just natural. It's a psychological thing to help us break those bonds. So, and I don't mean the bonds that these are my parents. I love my mom no matter what, but I'm so glad I don't live still with her. I have my own life, and I enjoy visiting her, but our relationship wouldn't be as good if I lived there. So in this, he's back home, but his parents still feel like they know what's best, and obviously that is very, very grating to this guy, and he gets upset. And he thinks it's stupid that everyone worries about him, which obviously we know what's going to happen. It's not. So then he goes to Emory because he had made that deal with his parents. And it seems like he's buying into the college life. You see this on page 119. Near the bottom, it says, to his parents' pleasant surprise as the school year stretched on, Chris seemed thrilled to be at Emory. He shaved, trimmed his hair, and readopted the clean-cut look he'd had in high school. His grades were nearly perfect. He started writing for the school newspaper. He even talked enthusiastically about going on to get a law degree when he graduated. Hey, Chris boasted to Walt at one point, I think my grades will be good enough to get into Harvard Law. So at this point, it feels like it was a phase. He grew through it, and now he's going to get back to, the American way of, climbing the ladder and getting a nice bank account and a car and a picket fence and 2.5 kids and all of that business. They even show how, he's talking about being a lawyer, but obviously, again, at top of 120, we find out he's like good with computers. He programs software that Walt says that's his dad, of course. Walt still uses in their company. It's these little details are to show us how amazing this character really was. Not a character, this human being, Chris McCandless, really was, what he could do. If that had just been his passion, and it wasn't. All right. And we'll talk as we get into this about whether that matters. I mean, is our passion what we should dedicate our lives to, or is it something we pursue in in our free time? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I have some very strong opinions about what I think. You guys are probably going to have some too, but we're going to talk about that later when we actually can have class discussion. Okay. A really important paragraph on page 120. It's the first real paragraph. It's full. It says many aspects of Chris's personality baffled his parents. He could be generous and caring to a fault, but he had a darker side as well, characterized by monomania, impatience, and unwavering self-absorption. Monomania being kind of like he gets focused on one thing and that's all he cares about. The qualities that seem to intensify through his college years, probably a mental illness, to be honest with you. Got to be honest with you, this guy has all sorts of trademarks that seem to fit with hallmarks, sorry, not trademarks, that seem to fit with several different options, to be honest with you. The way his anger and his temper goes, there could be some definite bipolar swings this guy has. And again, he's in a time period where that probably could have been diagnosed, but for whatever reason, we're so hesitant to deal with mental health when we shouldn't be. Um, we find out in this section what's going on with his family. We find out that his dad had two families at one point. He was married and he had another family as well. And he was trying to keep up with both of them, which I don't know why any guy thinks they can pull that off, but that always ends badly. But it does. And Chris finds out, and Chris is he never gets over this. He never gets over it. If you look at page 122, it says he measured himself and those around him by an impossibly rigorous moral code. That's right up here near the top. Okay. So he's got this very strong moral code. But he applies it to the people closest to him, and he doesn't apply it to like his heroes, because they even mention people like Tolstoy, Thoreau. A bunch of these people had problems. They were very flawed individuals, but Chris holds his family to this standard up here and the people he meets, and that's kind of a problem. So then you get this. This is probably the part for me that was the weirdest. It starts talking about Chris's political beliefs, and I thought 100% this guy was going to be like a far left type of person, but he's really not. And that's what's strange about it. It says, I'm on 123 now, Chris's seemingly anomalous political positions were perhaps best summed up by Thoreau's declaration in Civil Disobedience. I heartily accept the motto that government is best, which governs least. Beyond that, his views were not easily characterized. So, in fact, he starts like a college Republican group, and in a lot of ways he has very right-leaning ideas, but then he's got the left ones too. It's really interesting. You can't pigeonhole this guy into he's just some crazy liberal hippie, which, he's not. He's just a very unique individual in general. By the way, I think people politically should be more like this. It shouldn't be I'm a right wing or a left wing. You should be able to pick and choose. And with what I agree with conservatives on this, I agree with liberals on this. That should not be such a thing in our world today like it is. Nobody says you have to buy the whole platform. In fact, you shouldn't. But Chris got that, and that's one of the things I really look up to about him. He goes through his college experience like he said he would, but it even shows on page 124. It says during his senior year at Emory, Chris lived off campus in his bare Spartan room furnished with milk crates and mattresses. I mean, that first year it seemed like he was really living the college experience, but now his senior year he's just trying to get finished. This blow up with his parents has really been what pushes him over the edge, and he's not willing to forgive, and that's a big flaw in this guy. All right. Then he says that, once he graduates, he's going to go on this trip, but he's going to come out and see his family first. He doesn't. He donates I think it's like $20,000 something. He donates to Oxfam, and he basically disappears at this point. Doesn't come back and see his sister, doesn't see his parents, just he's gone. It says, kind of neat at the bottom here, of 125, by the way. In July of 1992, 2 years after Chris left Atlanta, Billy was asleep at Chesapeake Beach when she sat bolt upright in the middle of the night, waking Walt. I was sure I'd heard Chris calling me, she insists, tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't know how I'll ever get over it. I wasn't dreaming. I didn't imagine it. I heard his voice. He was begging, Mom, help me. But I couldn't help him because I didn't know where he was, and that was all said. He said, Mom, help me. I'm assuming that's the same time period that he's in Alaska. So really, interesting little detail there. Okay, then we get into chapter 13, which is a short chapter. It's really about his sister, Corrine, and setting up some things about her because we do need to flesh out her character a little bit more. And there's another good quote there. You can check that out on your own. But they point out about they're in Corrine's house. They're interviewing her, and they talk about two pictures of Chris. And a really cool line here on top of 128. It says, in both photos, Chris stares at the lens with the same pensive, recalcitrant squint as if he'd been interrupted in the middle of an important thought and annoyed to be wasting his time in front of the camera. They point out that smile or that facial expression is 100% him. That is what they'd remember. She talks about this dog that Chris loves. Chris loves animals. We see that a lot. She talks about how they wish they had let him take this dog because they knew he wouldn't put the dog's life at risk, even though he didn't care about putting his own at risk. Which is that's a great character trait. That's great indirect characterization about this guy. That he does care about others, even though he may not come off of like it very much. Um, we also get a little bit more. This is really about just setting up her character. This chapter is, but we find out that she has some differences in opinion. She's doing well financially, and she's very happy to be. She likes nice things. She believes that it's okay to have them. Chris would not be so kind about that. Um, she says all the time she insulted her parents about them working hard just to make money. She does the exact same thing, which is the typical route for a lot of kids, especially if they find themselves, being a little bit more. When I say radical here, I don't mean what we see in the news today where people are like blowing things up. By radical, I mean a little more extreme in their views, and they may lean a little bit more left in college. A lot of them, when they get out and get jobs, they tend to swing back moderate or more right, just because it becomes more of an issue of paying their own bills and what they want to do with their money. So, and Corrine obviously is that, but then there's people like Chris who don't. All right. Or people like me who somehow just fluctuate depending on how we feel, but really having more money has not made me move more right. It does a lot of people, and that's okay. That's fine. Nobody's judging people for that. I hope nobody's judging me for my opinions. Um, we also get the information about how she finds out about her brother's death. When her husband's the one who tells her, and it breaks her. I mean, as you would expect. Although I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I do feel like at some point some of this is a little bit, again, just good writing. You exaggerate. There's a little bit of hyperbole. I feel like she probably loved her brother. I feel like she plays it up here because this is a really good thing for her. It got a lot of attention. She wrote a book about it, things like that. I'm not saying she's capitalizing on her brother's death. Please understand that. But there does seem to feel that way at times. A lot of people have made that connection. Um, Really interesting detail. It talks about her on the plane back eating the terrible airline food because she just remembers that her brother starved and she doesn't want him to starve. All right. And then we get this closing, this kind of tender image at the close of the mom saying, I don't understand why you had to take these types of chances. I just don't understand it, which that's going to kind of be one of the continuing motifs throughout this book. People don't understand this guy. They don't understand why he does what he does. And you know what? That's fine. I don't understand why some of you do the things you do. Hopefully, there's not a death involved. I mean, that's what makes this so tragic. But the fact is a lot of us don't understand each other because we have this view in our mind of the way the world is supposed to be. That's been gifted to us by genetics or the environment we grew up in. And we rarely change that. And anybody who's different than that, we think is crazy, and they don't understand why they would possibly be that way. But the fact is that we're all different people, and your way of life is not always the only way, and there's a lot of other ways people choose to live. And his mom here being upset about that, she doesn't understand why he would do that. I'm sure she doesn't. And I would say she should have talked to him about it, but he didn't seem very willing to talk, which to me is the real tragedy in this book. This guy, really, if he had been more open about why he felt the way he did and the way he believed, I feel like things might have been different. But he was so intent on making it me against the world that he dies with a lot of unresolved emotions towards his family, and they don't get the closure that they probably needed. Right. But yes, that's chapters 12 and 13. Now I reduced it. You've got to still read it. I know for a fact some of you have not even touched the reading on this book, and it is going to hurt when we test on it. But I really would like you guys to make sure you've done the reading, stay on top of it, dedicate yourself to getting caught up. Okay. I'm going to make videos for 14 and 15 probably tomorrow, but they'll be there by the time you get to them. And hopefully these will be really useful for you. All right. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this book. I know some of you think that the main character is a weirdo, and you're probably right, to be honest with you, but there's some beauty in this book. There really is. And there's a lot more of the book to come. So hopefully you'll find it, even if you haven't decided you feel that way yet. All right, guys, well, have a pleasant afternoon and evening.